Part 66. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 651. Hearing the call of the Mother Nest Guards, the Devourer commanders who had been hiding aside because the Mother Nest Guards were discussing countermeasures ran over quickly. Although they did not directly participate in the war, they all went to the 3 continents to check the situation. They originally planned to decide how to attack based on the situation. However, now that the 10 Mother Nest Guards have arrived, how to make decisions is naturally not their business. Of these 3 continents, the human base on the eastern continent is closest to the sea. After landing, it will arrive in a short time. As for strength, it should be considered medium among the 3 continents. One of the Devourer commanders said. They had naturally communicated the situation they had heard on each continent, so it didn't matter who was telling the story now. Devourers are different from humans. Their level is determined by the mother nest, so there is no such thing as flattery or rushing to show off. Therefore, once this Devourer commander spoke, the other Devourer commanders stopped interrupting. As for the northern continent, we encountered the weakest resistance. The human base there is also far from the landing point, and it will take more than a day to reach it. As for the western continent, the base is in the middle of the other 2 continents, not far nor close. The human race on this continent is the strongest, but it is obvious that they have used some method to improve their strength, and they have no scruples when fighting, just like the humans on the eastern continent, fighting without regard for their lives. However, as long as we leave the city and get out of the battle, the human race on the western continent will no longer pursue us. It seems that they are guarding something in that city. And they don't have any weapons, just like us. They are all considered it was an unarmed battle, while the other 2 continents all used long-range weapons, which should be unique to this planet and have a high lethality to us. If the factor of weapons is added, the North continent should be the strongest, the West continent is second, and the East continent is the weakest. Without weapons, the West continent is the strongest, the East continent is second, and the North continent is the weakest. After listening to the words of the Devourer commander, number 7 nodded and then said. It seems that the worst of the 3 continents should be the East continent, followed by the North continent, and the strongest should be the West continent. I'm afraid that Wang Feng, Du Enlai, and others could never imagine that their East continent was actually considered the weakest when the Devourer evaluated the 3 continents. In fact, this is also the data obtained by the Devourer commander based on his own observations. Although the East continent has the Hope base and has caused casualties to the Devourer that are no less than the other 2 continents, after all, they used 40 tanks to self-destruct before. In the subsequent battles, this type of tank never appeared again, and in order to save ammunition, even the Hurricane missiles were not launched by Hope base. Therefore, the Devourer commander in the East continent at that time thought that Hope base had consumed the armored monster with great lethality. In the West continent, because of the dark bloodthirsty left by Chris, and the survivors of the West continent, after discovering the attack of the Devourer, immediately adopted the advice left by Wang Feng to them and hid. So the Devourers encountered those dark bloodthirsty on the West continent. Due to the order left by Chris before, those dark bloodthirsty were all concentrated in Chris's old nest. With such a dense number, the Devourer's attack was naturally blocked. But these dark bloodthirsty, under Chris's order, stayed in the city and did not pursue, so even if they wanted to attract them out and kill them after they were dispersed, they could not do it. In addition, the original strength of these dark bloodthirsty ones is the same as that of the Devourer's main force in this battle, the Predator, and they are all pseudo-level 5 creatures, so they are defined as the strongest among the 3 continents by the Devourer's commander. The situation in the North continent is another case. Because before the end of the world, the North continent was known as a fighting nation, so there were quite a lot of weapons and ammunition, especially after Wang Feng warned them that the Devourer was coming. They started several arsenals and began to manufacture weapons day and night. So after the Devourer attacked their base, they immediately suffered a lot of intensive firepower suppression, especially the method of adding superpowers to bullets, which was invented by the people of the North Continent first, so they naturally mastered this method. Especially the survivors of the North Continent, at the beginning, due to Wang Feng's potion, almost all of them were upgraded. Although they only reached the strength of awakened people, with the cooperation of hot weapons, they were not inferior to the other two continents at all. After all, they are known as a fighting nation. Before the end of the world, they almost all used firearms, which is completely different from the firearms control in the East Continent. Therefore, in the process of attacking the three continents, the Devourer suffered the most serious losses in the North Continent, so the Devourer commander emphasized the weapons of this planet. However, the Devourer commander also saw that although the human race in the North Continent had strong firepower, their performance in the battle was not as brave as the human race in the other two continents. Almost all of the human races on the other two continents are fearless of death. They are not at all as timid as those on the Bizhu continent. This is of course because the people in Bizhu continent are not united. It has not been long since the integration. Inovic and Augustine have not really integrated everyone together, so they fight independently. Of course, they also fight. He doesn't have the kind of momentum needed on the battlefield. Hope Base naturally has no such concerns. The first 40 tanks made the Devourer commander understand that this human base can only be destroyed, not conquered. As for the dark bloodthirsty people in Zizhu continent, they are basically creatures similar to zombies. They have no fear in their hearts. As long as the Devourers dare to enter their city, they will tear them into pieces at all costs. Therefore, after considering the situations of the three continents, the devouring commanders have always believed that the Zizhu continent is the most powerful. Especially the performance of the Dark Devourers made them guess that those Dark Devourers should be guarding something in the city. They guessed right, those Dark Devourers were guarding Chris' orders. Strictly speaking, the human race on the northern continent is similar to the human race on the western continent. Therefore, after all our troops have arrived, we will divide them into 3 parts. Before allocating it like this, let me express my opinion first. Just after he said that all the troops should be divided into 3 parts, Brood Guard number 7 seemed to remember something, so after a pause, he changed the topic. Actually, I think the Western continent is the most powerful. The creatures there are almost as powerful as our predators, and there are hundreds of thousands or even millions in number. We still don't know how many troops the Brood will eventually send over, but based on the upper limit of our Devourer's total strength, plus the Brood should leave at least half of its troops to protect itself. So I think that in the end the number will only exceed 4 million. If the troops are divided into 3 groups, those on the Western continent may have a very difficult time fighting. So I have a suggestion. We might as well concentrate all our forces and deal with the humans in the Western continent first. They don't use weapons anyway. In this case, our numerical advantage can be put to good use. After destroying their strongest continent, we will divide our forces into 2 groups and attack the other 2 continents that use weapons. We can use a small number of predators to consume them first. Although we have not seen their weapons, any weapon needs to consume energy, no matter what the energy is. So their weapons are definitely not endless. Once their weapons are almost exhausted, we can directly take over these 2 continents in one go and complete the mission assigned to us by the Brood. After talking about his plan, number 7 looked at the other Brood guards and asked, "What do you think of this plan?" Number 11 was the first to speak. Number 7. This is such a waste of time. It has been a long time since you led an army to attack a planet. Ever since you suffered a defeat on the planet of the Kali tribe, you even lost the prince and were taken by him. Gone is our artifact apocalypse. Now your courage is getting smaller and smaller. On this planet, their technology is far behind the Kali tribe. Not to mention space navigation, I even doubt that they can even leave the ground. You heard what they just said. From the beginning of the battle to now, those humans have not produced any war weapons similar to aircraft. Although we came in through a wormhole, large spaceships can't get through, but there are still a few small fighters. We have the air supremacy here. Why are you so hesitant? Theoretically, you said that the weapons of the human races on the other two continents should be consumed first. I agree with this, but this process also takes time. Who knows how many weapons these human races have stored now? It's less than half a year before we get here from the brood. We need to complete the cleansing of this planet within this half year, so your plan, although stable, is too slow. I don't agree. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 652. After hearing what number 11 said, number 7 frowned, but before he could speak, another brood guard said. Number 7. I also think that although your method is very reliable, it is indeed too slow. Otherwise, I will go to the Western continent and give me 1/3 of the troops. I will definitely be able to win it. Sighed. I'm with no 15. Number 11 also spoke. Count me in too. Another brood guard also spoke. In this way, even if the 3 brood guards responsible for a continent are gathered together, number 7 will have nothing to say. Okay. Number 11, 15, and 16. The 3 of you will lead 1/3 of the troops to attack the Western continent. On the 12th, 13th, and 14th, you 3 will also lead 1/3 of the troops and be responsible for cleaning up the Northern continent. On the 17th, 18th, and 19th, I will keep 1/3 of the remaining troops, and you will take the rest to occupy the weakest Eastern continent. And I will take the rest and stay in the Southern continent as a maneuver. If you encounter any situation, you can come back to me at any time. In addition, don't use those small fighters lightly. They are used by us to communicate with each other, especially the Northern and Eastern continents. I don't know if the weapons there will cause harm to our fighters, so try not to use them. Does everyone have any objections to this distribution? Number 7 looked at the other people and sighed softly. Since his idea was not accepted, forget it. Maybe he was really worried. How could such a ruined planet stop their army of devourers? However, number 7 knew that if humans were really so easy to deal with, why didn't the brood just bring them here? It would only take half a year for him to get here anyway, so he had to go through the wormhole first and send a group of people over first. Capture this planet. This is probably the first planet that is valued so highly by the brood, and it is also the first time that they have come to deal with the creatures on this planet specifically to destroy it. In the past, although they also turned countless planets into barren land, they were all in order to plunder life energy, because life energy is the foundation of the devourer. But this time on this planet, the devourer brood obviously wouldn't be able to take advantage, especially since he was so impatient. If he waits until he comes to the vicinity of this planet, then he launches an attack unexpectedly, and directly uses fighter planes to fly in all directions, dropping the devourer army to every corner of the planet. This tactic is their most commonly used. Most of the planets will directly lose their combat capabilities under the first round of attacks they launch, and will no longer be able to organize effective resistance until they are all killed and turned into life energy, delivered to the mother nest. Besides, since it is to destroy this planet, why does the brood bother so much? It must first kill all the humans on the surface of the planet, and then destroy the planet from the outside. Wouldn't it be simpler to launch an energy attack directly from outer space, destroying the human race on the planet, and even all the living creatures on the planet? In short, number 7 has always felt that the reaction of the brood this time is a bit abnormal, but if the brood does not tell them, they are not qualified to ask, so number 7 can only comfort himself secretly in his heart, hoping that this will be all right. I was just thinking nonsense. In fact, nothing happened. This planet would be destroyed by them smoothly. The other brood guards did not feel this way about number 7. The Devourer's actions had always been very smooth. Although they will lose some troops on every planet, the life energy plundered from that planet can definitely replenish these troops, and exceed this loss by thousands or even tens of thousands of times. Since they have never encountered any strong opponents, even the original Kali tribe only led to devouring because their prince obtained the core of life, gained independent consciousness, and got rid of the control of the mother nest. The divine weapon Apocalypse fell into the hands of the Kali tribe. So strictly speaking, the defeat on the Kali planet was not caused by the Kali people, but by problems within their devourers. So strictly speaking, the devourer has never suffered a loss in front of any enemy since its appearance. It is rare to lose so much this time. Perhaps it was because of this that number 7 suddenly became timid. After all, he was the one who followed the prince and lost the prince and Tiankai. Strictly speaking, he was also responsible. Although the brood did not recycle number 7 because of this incident is likely to cast a shadow on No 7's heart. Devourers who have reached their level are already independent living beings, possessing a high degree of autonomy. Even if it is the brood mark, their suppression is definitely not as serious as that of the commander and elite level devourers. This is why Li Yingning was able to absorb the life core under the nose of the brood and get rid of the control of the brood. The current brood mark in their bodies is more used by the brood to sense their location and issue orders to them. Of course, because they are brood guards and have a high degree of freedom, their yearning for freedom is not as strong as other devourers. It is very likely that even if the life core is placed in front of them, they will not necessarily touch it. In this regard, they are completely different from Li Yingning, because Li Yingning is not like them. He can enter other planets and lead other devourers to fight. Although there are not many such times, they don't have to stay in the mother nest all the time. And Li Yingning, as a prince and a backup of the mother nest, he has always stayed in the mother nest and has never been let out. That time in the Kali tribe was his first time to reach a planet, so that feeling made him feel very fresh, just like a child who was locked up at home all day and was not allowed to go out. Once he saw the outside world, he never wanted to go back. Therefore, Li Yingning took the risk and directly devoured the life core, because only in this way could he clear the mother nest mark on his consciousness core and avoid the mother nest's tracking. After these mother nest guards had assigned their targets, the devourer army was still continuously transported in. Seeing this situation, number 7 was relieved. No matter what, the more troops the better. Now there are more than 4 million troops. Will the mother nest send them 6 million troops in the end? No 7's hope was not realized in the end. The troops sent by the mother nest finally stopped at 5 million. In fact, 5 million is not a small number. With the advanced troops left in other continents, it is actually infinitely close to 6 million troops. For the Devourer, 6 million troops are definitely out in full force. After all, the mother nest will definitely leave some troops to protect itself. Although it only takes half a year to get here from the current location of the mother nest, it is in the vast universe after all. Who knows what will happen? Moreover, nearly 6 million Devourer troops are equivalent to 6 million undead warriors, which are more than enough to conquer any planet. Due to the unique body structure of the Devourer, they have an advantage when fighting other creatures. Even when they captured the high-tech planet of the Kali tribe, they only mobilized 8 million troops, although that was a surprise attack. Because the Devourer's spacecraft is made of life energy, the Kali people who have never come into contact with them did not discover them in advance. By the time the Kali people improved their detection equipment based on the special structure of the Devourer, they were no longer able to change the situation and could only detect how far away the pursuers were from them while running away. So, for the planet they are currently on, except for number 7, the other mother nest guards are full of confidence. As soon as they saw that the wormhole stopped transporting troops and then closed, they began to allocate troops. Because the troops exceeded the budget, and they heard that the human base in the East Continent was the weakest, the three Mother Nest Guards responsible for attacking the Hope Base took the initiative to request to reduce their proportion of troops and allocated troops to number 11 and others who were responsible for the West Continent. Therefore, the final distribution of troops is 1 million in the East Continent, 2 million in the North Continent, 2.5 million in the West Continent, and the remaining less than 500,000 devourers will stay in the South Continent with number 7. Number 7 did not express any opinion on the decision of the 17th, 18th, and 19th Nest Guards. In fact, he is not worried about the Hope Base now, because the East Continent is the last one among the three continents in the mouths of the Devourer commanders. Now he is mainly worried about the West Continent, because he is wondering what the creatures that created those warriors are. Is it human? Or other creatures that came to this planet? What secrets are there in the city guarded by those warriors? Wang Feng would never have thought that the order that he asked Chris to leave to the Dark Bloodthirsters in order to fight against the Devourers would make those guys with little wisdom become the most powerful enemies in the eyes of the Devourers. Because of this, the Nest Guards like number 7 who did not really understand the distribution of forces on this planet adopted this battle plan that later put them in an irretrievable situation. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 653. Next, because the Devourers were divided into three groups, the planet where Wang Feng and his team were located was completely plunged into war. Not only the three continents, but also the oceans, there were constant battles. However, it was obvious that the mutant beasts in the ocean could only do limited damage to the Devourers. Although most of them were huge, due to environmental factors, their attributes were mostly water attributes, and it was difficult to really cause fatal injuries to the Devourers. Even those marine mutant beasts such as whales or giant squids could swallow a lot of Devourers in one gulp, but this was not a threat to Devourers that did not need to breathe at all. And their defenses that gave Wang Feng and other humans a headache were completely useless in front of Devourers that could absorb life energy. Even if it is a giant turtle of level 6 or level 7, with a defense that is outrageous, the Devourer only needs to press his palm on the turtle's shell, without breaking its defense, to suck out all its life energy. The Hope Base is relatively stable at present, because the intelligence provided by the Devourer commanders made the Mother Nest Guards make a wrong judgment and classify them as the weakest continent. Therefore, when the main force of the Devourer army came to this planet and began to cleanse this planet, there were only 1 million Devourers who came to the East Continent. Although these 1 million are much stronger than the Devourer advance army at the beginning, the current Hope Base has increased in strength by more than 10 times. After Wang Feng absorbed the energy source in his body, the survivors who reached the 5th and 6th level biological strength are basically everywhere in the Hope Base. The warriors of the two legions and the core members have almost reached the strength of level 7 creatures. Although level may 7th be the peak they can reach in their lifetime, at least it is enough for the current battle against the Devourers. As for the future path, they must first overcome the crisis in front of them. Among the Devourers now, only the commander-level Devourers who have reached the level of 8 creatures can steadily suppress the people in the Hope Base. And the 3 Mother Nest Guards who came to the East Continent as warlords, the commander-level Devourers have different strengths. There are level 7 and 8, and the Mother Nest Guards are all level 9 creatures. Their strength can crush the people in the Hope Base, but the current advantage of the Hope Base is the number of people. Even if all the troops sent by the Devourer army come here, the number is completely incomparable to the Hope Base. However, since most of the survivors have no combat experience at all, they cannot exert their strength. Perhaps in a one-on-one and desperate situation, they can defeat a high-level Devourer. However, in the current large-scale war, it is better not to let them participate. Once they are mixed into the battle lines of the two legions, Not only will the strength of the two legions not be enhanced, but the combat effectiveness of the two legions will be reduced. So now, the strength currently displayed by the Hope base is evenly matched with the Devourer army, which is also a state that Duanlei wants to deliberately maintain. Although they have no way to detect the movements of the Devourer now, Duanlei has already guessed that the Devourer is now attacking 3 continents at the same time. This gives the Hope base an opportunity to grow, not only giving them time to wait for Wang Feng, but also giving Duanlei an opportunity to train soldiers. The Hope base is now very strong, but it is like a child holding a gun, who can't use it and can't shoot accurately. If he really lets him shoot, he may hurt his own people. The main force of the battle is still the two legions, but Duanlei has specially divided a small section of the defense wall for those survivors who are willing to join the battlefield after improving their strength. And these survivors, after a short training by Li Yingning, stepped onto the battlefield to defend the small section of the defense wall they were responsible for. Because now Li Yingning has no time and no conditions to use the training method used to train the guards for these survivors. So he can only train them simply, at least let them know what they should do on the battlefield, and then push them to the battlefield. Among them, casualties are inevitable, but this is necessary. Only in the test of blood and fire can they grow rapidly. And Duanlei is always paying attention to the movements on the battlefield, trying to maintain a slightly disadvantaged, but not so obvious state. Now not only the survivors are training, but also the soldiers of the two legions are also training. After all, many of them have not had direct contact with the Devourer before. Just listening to your comrades in arms and practicing how to fight the Devourer is not as effective as fighting the enemy directly. Although there are 2 Devourers in the Hope base, Li Yingning and number 7, they cannot serve as sparring partners to train these warriors. Because they cannot kill these warriors, that would be meaningless, and it might mislead these warriors and make them underestimate the Devourers. On a real battlefield, a single negligence could lead to death, and even implicate teammates. Only on a real battlefield can you understand the horror of a bad teammate. If you die at the hands of a godlike opponent, you will be a little unwilling at best. But if you die because of a bad teammate, you will feel that you died unjustly and feel extremely aggrieved. Now, the soldiers of the two legions have finally encountered real Devourers and are beginning to get familiar with their fighting methods. Hope base is getting familiar with Devourers, and the 3 nest guards are also judging the strength of Hope base. After all, their previous assessment of this side was only from the Devourer commander's mouth, and they didn't really see it. Although the Devourer commander couldn't lie to them, this kind of thing was not seen by himself, so of course he wouldn't feel at ease. So now the battle between Devourers and Hope base seems a little bit sullen, and both sides are testing each other. Such a situation is of course what Duanlei wants. For him, the longer the war between humans and Devourers drags on, the better. Not only will it buy time for Wang Feng, but there will also be more and more capable fighters in Hope base. As for the consumption of ammunition, we can't care so much for the time being, we can only save as much as possible. However, in this regard, Duanlei made a mistake. He began to let the soldiers of the two legions reduce the use of long-range weapons and leave ammunition for the other survivors. Duanlei thought that those survivors had never been on the battlefield, so it would be better to let them attack from a distance first. The Devourer had no means of long-range attack, so they were not so afraid. If they were asked to fight in close combat, I am afraid that the instantaneous casualties would make them lose their fighting spirit, especially the Devourer's killing method was still so terrifying. But in this way, the strength of the Hope base was exposed. Because the soldiers of the two legions used firearms for long-range attacks before, only when the Devourer rushed to the front would they rush up and kill him. But now the battle lines of the two legions have basically been intertwined with the Devourer, so the 3 nest guards felt something was wrong. Before, it can be said that they had a small number of strong men leading the way, and their cooperation was indeed tacit, so they killed their own soldiers. but now it seems that they don't just have those few strong men, but all of them seem to be human beings who have reached level 6 or 7. What the hell is going on? Isn't it said that the strength here is the weakest? Then where did all these human beings who are above level 5 come from? Those transformed human beings in the western continent are only level 5, which is equivalent to the strength of the predators, but the ones here are all level 6 or 7. You actually told me that this side is the weakest? The 3 nest guards felt something was wrong and quickly called several devourer commanders over. Come and tell me. What's going on? Didn't you even know their strength before? The 17th nest guard looked at the devourer commanders and asked, his face was quite gloomy. The devourer commanders looked at the battlefield and were speechless. Although these humans also rushed into the devourer army and fought with them at close range before, one reason was that the human race used a lot of long-range artillery at that time, plus the self-explosion of the 40 tanks. At that time, the battlefield was filled with thick smoke and visibility was very low. They did not rush into the battlefield in person, but only observed from behind, so how could they see the true strength of these humans? They only looked at the casualties of the humans at that time, even though they used so many weapons, and so many humans desperately drove the armored monster into the middle of their army, and then died together with the surrounding devourers. It was based on this judgment that they came to the conclusion that the East Continent was the weakest. Who knew that now they suddenly discovered that there were so many high-level humans here? Looking at several devourer commanders, the 3 mother nest guards shook their heads, and then number 17, who had just spoken, said, "The strength of this continent has been misjudged. I think we should ask for reinforcements." Not good. Number 18 shook his head. Where are the reinforcements? Even if they come, it is number 7 who brings the less than 500,000 troops from the South Continent. Do you think, with more of them, we can take this place? Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 654. Number 18 is right. Number 19 also nodded and said, if number 7 comes and lets him see the situation, I think he will make us all withdraw and carry out the plan he proposed before, concentrate all our forces and capture a continent first. We were all opposed to No 7's decision at that time. If we still choose this method in the end, even if we finally win this planet, then we will. Haha. Finally take over this planet. Number 17 smiled bitterly and said, why do I feel that this is the best ending? Have you ever thought about it? Now our enemies here are inexplicably much stronger. This proves that they hid their strength before. Having said this, number 17 looked at number 18 and number 19. Which one of you can be sure that the human races on the other 2 continents are not hiding their own strength? Number 18 and number 19 looked at each other with serious expressions. After all, what number 17 said was very possible. Are you going to withdraw your troops? I don't agree. Number 18 hesitated and said, our casualties are not large yet, so let's take a closer look. Are all the elites in this base coming out to scare us away? Look carefully, although they withstood our attack, they did not counterattack our army crazily like these guys said before. Maybe the previous counterattack cost them a lot of elites, so now they don't dare to do it again. Humans are different from us. Even if we lose more troops, as soon as the brood comes, we can immediately replenish our troops. Strong men from the human race do not appear so easily. Moreover, they may be the ones who come into contact with our army, and they are the strongest ones. The ones behind them are just to scare us. After hearing the words of number 18, number 17, and number 19 also looked towards the human race's defense wall again and observed more carefully. Ha! Look over there. I was right. Number 18 suddenly found evidence of his guess and pointed in a direction with his finger. That place was the defensive wall defended by the ordinary survivors. Since they were training soldiers, they were currently shooting firearms, but the hit rate was obviously not high. However, because the Devourers in other locations had already rushed to the city wall and started close combat with the soldiers of the two legions, the defensive wall they defended did not receive much attention from the Devourers. Immediately give the order. Let the soldiers who attack that section of the defensive wall attack with all their strength. Number 18 turned to the Devourer commander and said. With this order, the pressure on that section of the defensive wall suddenly increased greatly. Because other places had been able to attack the city wall before, the predators did not attack this side with all their strength, but transferred their forces to other places. Anyway, their ultimate goal is to break through here. It doesn't matter where they enter, but now they have the order. Although they don't understand it, the Devourers should be the most thorough legion in the world in executing orders, so they flock here one after another. Through the monitoring screen, Duanlei also discovered the changes on the battlefield, so he immediately ordered that these survivors be removed, and the two legions of soldiers from other locations would fill the vacancies here. Seeing the mobilization of the human army, especially the core members such as Lu Feng who were fighting at the front, rushing directly in that direction, number 18 laughed. Haha. What, the rest of them are just makeup, only the people at the front are their strong ones. Fortunately, we didn't ask for reinforcements. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing if other guys knew that we were actually scared by the human race. Number 17 was still frowning and staring at the battlefield. Even if number 18 was right, only the humans at the front were the real strong ones, but this number was definitely a lot, right? Moreover, in their eyes, the human race basically looks the same, and they can't tell the difference. They don't know the difference between these people, or whether they have been replaced. Even if there are no substitutions, tens of thousands of people are fighting on the battlefield where the two sides are now in contact. It will definitely not be easy for them to win with such a number of strong men. And don't they have such strong people behind them? I still think we should report back the situation here. Number 17 said. Number 17, you. Just as number 18 was about to speak, he suddenly looked up at the sky. A fighter plane belonging to them came over their heads. Then, the fighter plane slowly descended, and a Devourer commander walked out of it. He saluted the three brood guards by punching his lower abdomen. This is a unique etiquette among Devourers, which is to make a fist with your hands and point at the location of the core of your consciousness. 3 adults. Sir number 7, please let me ask about the situation here. Among the 3 continents, only this side has not reported. The Devourer commander said after saluting. What about the 2 continents? Number 18 asked immediately. It is said that it went well. The battle reports from the northern continent show that humans have suffered heavy losses, with more than 5 million dead. It is estimated that their base will be destroyed in about 20 days, and the cleansing will be completed within a month. The Devourer commander replied that the one who asked him the question was the nest guard, who was the same as number 7 in terms of status, so he did not dare to hide it. As for the strongest western continent, our losses were huge, but those cyborgs suffered even greater losses. According to Lord number 11, he will wipe out all those cyborgs within 15 days and find the secrets they are guarding. Hearing the Devourer commander's report, the 3 nest guards were stunned. They did not expect that the western continent, which was originally thought to be the strongest, would become the fastest conquered continent. Although there was a line in the battle report that the losses were huge, it was obvious that the nest guards did not care too much about this. In fact, as long as they could complete the tasks assigned by the nest, they would not care even if they lost all 6 million troops on this planet. For Devourers at the level of the nest guards, they have always believed that they are completely different from Devourers at other levels. Even the Devourer commander, in their eyes, is completely expendable, and there is not much difference from ammunition in the eyes of humans. Although sometimes it is necessary to save, if it is really necessary, it will definitely be consumed without hesitation. The mother nest guards of the other two continents did the same. At least, the mother nest guard number 11 of the Zizhu continent was the most active because he was the first to directly stand up and refute No. 7's plan. As soon as he arrived in the Zizhu continent, he ordered the entire army to go to the city occupied by the Dark Bloodthirsty. After a casual attack, he found that these Dark Bloodthirsty, as the Devourer commander said, would not leave the city to chase them. Number 11 immediately determined in his heart that there must be some secrets hidden in the city in front of them. After all, this continent is evaluated as the strongest continent, and the strong men on this continent are all gathered in the city, just defending, not chasing. Humph. I guess this is the human race preparing something underground in the city, so they are delaying time. We must break through the city as soon as possible to see what conspiracy the human race has. Number 11 said, looking at the city in front of him. The other two nest guards also nodded. They certainly had no objection to breaking through the city as soon as possible. After all, they were also supporters of number 11 at the time. If the time was delayed too long, or if they simply failed to take this place, they would have no face. Then, let's just start the uninterrupted attack until the city is broken. Number 11 nodded. However, number 11 did not let the 2.5 million devourers he brought directly surround the city, since the creatures inside were comparable to their lowest level warriors. And these guys would not chase them out, so they simply attacked only one point, not to break the city, but only to consume the opponent's troops. So, number 11 selected a section of the city wall and asked his devourers to attack this section with all their strength. Other places were temporarily ignored, and everything was mainly for killing. And number 11 was not like the three nest guards on the East continent. They only sent out the lowest level predators, interspersed with some elite level devourers. As for the commander level ones, they did not send them to the battlefield at all. Number 11 directly led the Devourer commander, with the elites as the main force and the predators as the auxiliary, to launch an attack on the city. Due to the level suppression, the Dark Devourers suffered a great loss at the beginning, and their brains were not smart. When the Devourers attacked this section, they only participated in the defense of the Dark Devourers in this section, and the Dark Devourers in other places were still wandering in the city. However, since the Dark Devourers only aimed to kill the enemy in the battle and did not care about themselves at all, even so, they still caused great losses to the Devourers. Of course, none of the Devourer commanders who participated in the attack really fell, but many elite Devourers and Predators died. This situation was particularly obvious after they entered the city, because after entering the city, the Devourer army was not so neat, and the Dark Predators were quite fast, which was a very suitable attribute for street fighting. But the most troublesome thing for the Devourers was the sunlight. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 655. Sunlight. This should have been the biggest weakness of the Dark Bloodthirsty. There are still a large number of survivors in Zizhu continent because the Dark Bloodthirsty is afraid of the sun. Otherwise, even if they were not caught by the Dark Bloodthirsty, they would have starved to death due to lack of food. It is precisely because of this weakness that Dark Bloodthirsty people are able to go out and grow food when the sun is bright. Wang Feng also used this weakness of the Dark Bloodthirsty to attack them. But it was unexpected that at this time, when the Devourer army was attacking the city, this weakness of the Dark Bloodthirsty would actually increase the Devourer's losses. The reason is simple. When they first started attacking the city, the weather seemed to be taking care of them. It was always cloudy. Therefore, they did not discover the weakness of the Dark Bloodthirsty. But after the siege made some progress, the sky suddenly cleared up and the sun began to shine on the earth again. The Devourers have no reaction to this, but the Dark Bloodthirsters are different, because sunlight can cause fatal damage to them, so they are very sensitive to this. So, before the sun appeared, the Devourers were surprised to find that the Dark Bloodthirsty people who were fighting with them suddenly disappeared. Not only the dark bloodthirsty people in front of them, but also all the dark bloodthirsty people in the entire city. Disappear. This change made the Devourers confused for a moment. They didn't know that this was just the dark bloodthirsty hiding from the sun, but they felt that they had already invaded the city. Therefore, the real controller of the city was the one who created these transformed people. Those humans changed their tactics. The three brood guards also became a little overwhelmed because of this unexpected situation, because they didn't know why these enhanced people suddenly disappeared. However, they soon discovered that the dark bloodthirsty people did not disappear, but hid in those buildings. Because the darkness and bloodthirsty just wanted to avoid the sun, but the orders left by Chris still had to be carried out, so they just hid in the shadows of the building and stared at the Devourers. After discovering this, number 11 discussed with number 15 and number 16 who came with him, and the final decision was that since these people were hiding, they couldn't just wait outside. Still fight in. Because they waited outside for several hours, although they tried to lure the dark bloodthirsty out, due to their fear of the sun, none of the dark bloodthirsty would appear under the sunlight. The Devourers didn't know that this was because of the sunlight. They thought it was because in the previous attack, they caused a lot of losses to the dark bloodthirsty, but their losses were very small. That's why the humans here took the current way of fighting. Since a quick victory was needed, it was impossible to let all the Devourers wait outside, so number 11 first sent the Devourers into those buildings to fight against the dark bloodthirsty ones. This time he discovered that after entering the building, the dark bloodthirsty no longer evaded, but actively attacked those Devourers who entered the shadows. After this battle lasted for an hour, number 11 and the others began to feel that their progress was too slow, so they simply ordered all the Devourers to enter the city, scatter in search of enemies, and kill them. As a result, it was this order that caused the army of 2.5 million Devourers led by them on the 11th to be almost annihilated in the city. If they had not desperately retreated, the dark bloodthirsty did not pursue them. There may really be very little left. Because, after the army was ordered to enter the city on the 11th and conduct a comprehensive search for the dark bloodthirsty, the Devourer army was dispersed throughout the city. Although they did not spread to the entire city, they were only in a quarter of the city. Search in. But after all, they needed to enter the building, so the previous attack formation, in which they suffered very little losses, could no longer be maintained. After they entered the city, there were constant battles in the buildings they entered. Although the losses began to intensify, number 11 and the other brood guards did not care. But after this situation lasted for less than 2 hours, a sudden reversal occurred because the sun went down. There is no sunlight outside, and it has once again become the world of dark bloodthirsty people. Those dark bloodthirsty people who were hiding in the dark and watching the battles taking place in other buildings can only choose to watch the battle because of the obstruction of sunlight. The Blood Man, after sunshine evacuated the city, immediately rushed out of his hiding place and began to attack. Because Chris's order was to kill all creatures that entered the city, and now the Devourers have entered their city, fully complying with the order Chris left. Almost in an instant, all the Devourers rushed out, surrounded the Devourers who invaded their city, and began a crazy attack. Even the Devourer commander began to die under the lifeless attacks of the large group of dark bloodthirsties, let alone those predators and elite Devourers. Oops. They just want to lure us in, scatter us, and then kill us all in the city. Get back. Number 11 suddenly realized that although his idea was not quite right, of course no one would correct his guess at this moment. The other two brood guards also gave the order to retreat without hesitation, and the three of them were the first Devourers to leave the city. Because none of these three guys actually entered the city, they were just watching from the edge of the city. Now when they saw a sudden attack, their first reaction was to flee first. This is also allowed by the brood, because to the brood, only they are the most precious. As for the Devourers of other levels, even the commander, as long as the life energy is enough, there is no shortage. After receiving the order, the Devourers immediately began to evacuate. However, the number of Devourers who finally withdrew from the city was less than 1.5 million. Just because they entered the city, they lost nearly half of their troops, which made the three brood guards feel depressed. What should we do? We don't have enough troops. Number 15 looked at the other two companions and asked. In fact, he wanted to ask for reinforcements, but their group had already stopped talking about the big words before. Now, just a few days after arriving, they asked for reinforcements. This is a bit difficult to say. I didn't expect these guys to be so ruthless. 4 of them, even the commander level ones, died. Number 16 smacked his tongue and said, in his opinion, it is unlikely that these guys who have just reached level 5 can kill the Devourer commander even if they are piled up in numbers. Although the dead Devourer commanders were all 7th level commanders at the bottom of the commander level, they were still 2 levels higher than these guys. These dark bloodthirsties created by Chris have similar body structures to Xiao Wu, and they have no strength limit, and they can also strengthen their own strength by absorbing the life energy of other creatures. However, the previous Chris didn't have that much life energy for them to absorb. Even if he caught a human, he still needed to send him back for transformation. That's why these guys have always been level 5 creatures, but now that Devourer is coming to their doorstep, it actually becomes a way for them to improve their strength. Now among these dark bloodthirsty, many 6th level creatures have appeared, but, for some unknown reason, they have not regained their consciousness. And due to the restrictions of Chris' order, they did not go beyond the city to hunt down the escaping Devourers. Otherwise, let alone 1.5 million, the Devourer army might not even have 150,000 left. Wait. The whole army is on standby. Number 11 suddenly discovered a problem. Although it was dark now, they had already thrown out a lot of lighting balls, and due to the evacuation, they had no time to take back those lighting balls. So number 11 clearly saw the reaction of those dark bloodthirsty people. They still haven't chased them out. Did you see it? Pointing at the dark bloodthirsty people who were standing on the edge of the city, baring their teeth and claws at them, number 11 shouted loudly. What's wrong? Aren't they always like this? Number 15 did not react. He just looked at the dark bloodthirsty people and answered casually. No. This time is different from before. Think about it. Before, our army was outside and they had a reason not to come out to chase us. But just now we were running away. Number 11 shook his head and said. Think carefully about what happened just now. If they chased them out just now, how much loss would we have suffered? The other 2 brood guards thought about it seriously, and suddenly their expressions changed drastically. If the situation mentioned by number 11 really happened, they would definitely suffer heavy losses, and they would even lose 1 out of 10. In that case, they may have no other choice but to ask for reinforcements. I think there may be something we haven't figured out yet. There should be no one to direct these guys. As for the situation of them not leaving the city, although I don't quite understand, at least under the situation just now, if they don't chase them out, then we still have a chance to kill them with our existing forces. Number 11 looked at the dark bloodthirsty man in the distance and said thoughtfully. What do we do? 16 asked. Now, gather your forces and continue to attack in the same way as before and see how they react. Number 11 waved his hand and said. Although these creatures are not low in strength, their intelligence is very low. If there is no one to direct them, it shouldn't be very difficult to kill them. The other 2 brood guards looked at each other and said nothing, but they waved their hands and asked several Devourer commanders to issue orders. The battle continued in the light of the lighting ball. Seeing those dark bloodthirsty people, it was exactly as he had guessed. The rhythm of the battle returned to his side again. The enemy was only passively defending. Number 11 couldn't help but relax. Tone. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 656. As the battle continued, time gradually passed. When the morning sun appeared in the sky again, the previous situation appeared again. Number 11 ignored the dissuasion of the two companions around him and took the risk alone to enter the city. He looked at the empty city again, and looked up at the sun hanging high in the sky. He seemed to have an idea in his mind. Look. The disappearance of those enhanced people is not because they have any plans or changed the way of fighting, but it is related to this thing. Number 11 pointed to the sun in the sky and said, "Remember? Last time, those enhanced people disappeared after this thing appeared. They seem to be unable to appear under the irradiation of this thing. Are you sure?" Number 15 frowned. Now they have lost half of their troops and can't take risks anymore. If this is just No 11's guess, if the previous situation happens again, then they will really be in big trouble. Looking at No 15's expression, and then looking at number 16 who had a similar expression, number 31 stopped talking, but flashed and jumped down. After going down to the ground, number 11 directly called several Devourer commanders and said to them, "You guys, go in there and catch a reinforced person. Remember, I want him alive." Because the dark bloodthirsty killed by the Devourers, like humans, were drained of energy and turned into mummies. Such corpses are of course no longer afraid of sunlight, so the Devourers have not discovered the weakness of the dark bloodthirsty until now. The Devourer commanders who received the order rushed into a building without any hesitation. When the dark bloodthirsty rushed up to attack them, they grabbed one of them and immediately withdrew from the building. They just rushed out of the building, and the sunlight naturally shone on the dark bloodthirsty body without any obstruction. At this moment, the dark bloodthirsty roared, and then bursts of green smoke rose from his body. I'm sure. Looking at the dark bloodthirsty who died soon under the sunlight, number 11 took a breath and answered the question that number 15 asked him just now. It seems that the light emitted by this thing can kill these enhanced people, so can't we just demolish these buildings? Number 16 suddenly shouted happily, but then looked at the surrounding buildings and shook his head again. Without anyone's answer, he had already rejected his idea. It is definitely not possible to demolish the buildings, but now we know their weakness. As long as this thing falls or is covered by something, can't we clear them all out? Number 15 saw the embarrassment of number 16 and quickly spoke up to help. "Well, that's right, but I may have a better way." Number 11 looked at the sun in the sky, and suddenly his eyes lit up. "Let the small fighter here come over." Hearing No 11's order, a Devourer commander immediately ran away. Each of their teams had a small fighter following them, which did not participate in the battle, but was only used to transmit messages. In less than 2 minutes, a small fighter plane flew over. Although it was called a small fighter plane, it was not that small. Although it could not be compared with the spaceship destroyed by Wang Feng, it could at least accommodate hundreds or thousands of Devourers. "I will operate it, and you cooperate with me from below," number 11 said, and then jumped onto the fighter. This fighter, like the spaceship destroyed by Wang Feng before, is actually a creature, but its intelligence is also very low, perhaps not as good as those dark bloodthirsty ones. Therefore, if you want him to make some complex movements or changes, you still need a Devourer to operate it. And in order to verify whether his idea works, number 11 decided to operate the fighter himself. After number 11 jumped onto the fighter, the appearance of the fighter began to change slowly. Since the fighter is also composed of life energy, basically, it can change into any shape like the Devourer. And now, number 11 continues to stretch its body and flatten it to increase its area. Looking at the shadow cast by the fighter on the ground, number 15 and number 16 suddenly looked at each other. They already knew what number 11 wanted to do. That's right, number 11 just wanted to do it by himself. Create a shadow, cover a building, and then lure those dark bloodthirsty people out to attack. Because they already knew that as long as they were in the city, these guys would come out to attack them. Now they don't come out, of course, because of the light. If they block the light, let them rush out to fight with them, and then drive the fighter away and expose them to the sun. Maybe the speed of killing these guys will be much faster, and their side will be safer. Soon, a shadow covering a radius of 40 to 50 meters appeared. If they were not afraid of flying too low and being attacked by those dark bloodthirsty people, perhaps this shadow could continue to expand. Now the area of the fighter plane has been stretched to the limit by number 11 and can no longer expand. Moreover, number 11 mainly wants to try this method first. If the dark bloodthirsty people are unwilling to appear under the shadow they block, then everything will be in vain. The fighter plane flew to the door of a building, blocking the sunlight in this area. Number 11 was very careful and adjusted the speed of the fighter plane very slowly, trying to imitate the illusion that the sun was covered by clouds. After the shadow appeared, at the signal of number 16 and number 15, several Devourer commanders entered the shadow and acted as bait to attract the dark bloodthirsty. Because they were now deep in the city, and because they had not confirmed their ideas before, they did not let the Devourer army enter the city again, fearing that the previous incident would happen again. So now they only have a few Devourer commanders around them to use, but because it is an experiment, it doesn't matter. After several Devourer commanders appeared in the shadow, a group of dark bloodthirsty rushed out immediately, because at this time, the shadow blocked by the fighter plane had already covered the building and the Devourer commanders. Without the threat of sunlight, the dark bloodthirsty will of course come to execute Chris's order and kill these invaders. Seeing the dark bloodthirsters rushing out, number 11 did not drive the fighter away immediately, but waited for a few seconds until he felt that there were enough dark bloodthirsters rushing out, and then he suddenly moved the fighter away. The dark bloodthirsters who were instantly exposed to the sun all screamed miserably. Except for 2 or 3 dark bloodthirsters who rushed into the building at the moment when the sun fell, the other more than 100 dark bloodthirsters all fell under the sun. After a while, they became a pile of skeletons. Haha! It works. Number 15 and number 16 looked at each other and laughed at the same time. Afterwards, number 11 experimented twice more, and found that each time was the same as before, and finally confirmed that he had come up with a good way to quickly kill these enhanced people. After driving the fighter plane to the outskirts of the city, number 11 steadied the fighter plane, then jumped down and said, "I will go back to the South Continent immediately and ask number 7 to get all the remaining fighter planes. Don't be idle either. Now we know that these guys are afraid of sunlight, so this city is not dangerous for us now. So our army continues to enter the city, enter the buildings to kill those enhanced people like before, and evacuate before dark." Number 15 and number 16 looked at each other and nodded in agreement at the same time. Even if they have discovered a new method now, they don't have so many fighter planes, so it's still too slow to just use this method. As for letting the army enter the city and kill those buildings, there will definitely be losses, but this is obviously not within the scope of concern of the Mother Nest Guards. As long as they can conquer this continent and complete the cleanup, even if there are only 3 Mother Nest Guards left, there will be no problem. They are just regretting that they don't have the large spaceships used by the advance team. Otherwise, the spaceships can probably cover at least half of the city when stretched. In that case, maybe in just a short while, they can kill all the dark bloodthirsty people in the city and complete their mission. So, number 11 personally drove the fighter back to the South Continent, and asked for all the remaining spare fighters, leaving only 1 for number 7. There are a total of 10 such small fighters. Now, except for the 3 fighters in the South Continent, the North Continent, and the East Continent, the remaining 7 are temporarily transferred to the West continent. However, this is also what number 11 promised number 7 after returning, saying that in about 15 days, the city will be cleared and the secrets guarded by those guys will be found. In fact, now number 11 also vaguely feels that these guys may not have any secrets at all, because until now, they have not found any creatures other than the enhanced people. However, there is another possibility that there are humans underground who are really studying something and have no time to care about it. Besides, except for this city, number 11 and his friends have not yet visited other places in the West continent. That's why number 11 didn't say it directly, but left himself some wiggle room. He only said to clear the city, but didn't give himself a time to cleanse the Western continent. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 657. Early before them, the news had been sent back from the North Continent. The North Continent is the farthest continent from the South Continent, and they have experienced the most battles in the sea. Therefore, the Devourer army of the North Continent was the last to arrive on the continent and enter the battlefield. However, because the enemies they faced were just survivors, and these survivors were not so united, their progress was much faster. At least, the Devourers of the North Continent achieved much greater results than those of the East Continent. Although the artillery fire of the North Continent was fierce, the 3 Mother Nest Guards who came to the North Continent to command the army this time adopted a dispersed attack method. In contrast to the West Continent's attack on only one point, they let their army surround the entire city as soon as they came up, and then attacked the city in front of them in the form of a small team. They originally planned to waste the artillery fire in this way, but seeing this kind of attack, Augustine and Inovic both ordered their people not to use heavy weapons, but to use light weapons to resist the attack of these devourers. Because the bullets were all attached with fire powers, although they didn't know where the consciousness core of these devourers was, there were still many devourers who fell under their guns in the countless bullets. If it had been carried out according to the situation, the progress of the North Continent might have become the same as that of the East Continent, at least not much faster than that. What made the Devourers especially headache was that the survivors of the North Continent were not all hiding in one city, but scattered in 6 cities that were very close to each other. And these 6 cities were connected to each other, and each city was flat and there was no obstruction. No matter which city they attacked, there would be 2 other cities to come to the rescue and attack them from a distance behind them. If they turned around to chase them, those people would turn around and run away, and then the people in the city would chase them and shoot at them. You know, these 6 cities were carefully selected by Wang Feng and recommended to Augustine and Inovic. After Wang Feng left, Augustine and Inovic opened up the communication between the 6 cities. Both sides occupied 3 cities, and also activated the arsenals in the cities and began to manufacture weapons and ammunition in large quantities to prepare for the upcoming war. Although there is still a certain gap between the 2 groups until now, after all, as long as there are people, there will be a struggle for power. Even if Augustine and Inovic don't want to fight for this, but sitting in their positions, the people under them will not let them hand over power to each other. Even within the 2 sides, they have fought for the management rights of the 3 cities on their side. Augustine's side is okay. After all, they already have a relatively complete government agency, so the internal conflicts are not very big. As for Inovic, it was quite troublesome because all of them were survivors who had lived in the outer city before. Originally, when they were in the outer city, they were divided into East, South, West and North, and now they were arguing over the management rights of these 3 cities. Finally, it was Inovic who proposed that the commander-in-chief of his 3 cities be responsible for the communication between the cities and the coordination with Augustine. As for these 3 cities, they would be managed by the other 3 leaders who had managed the outer city at the time, which was considered to restore the original management system of the outer city at that time. The other 3 leaders were naturally happy to accept it when they heard it, because in this way, it was equivalent to Inovic giving up himself. The commander-in-chief sounds good, but in fact, it is just a leader whose power has been emptied. Because in this way, the three of them can firmly grasp the cities they manage in their hands. As for Inovaca's orders, it depends on the situation. Whether to listen or not, as long as they promote all the people they can trust, then they have the final say. As for the communication with Augustine, it is just like a diplomat, and they were not interested in it originally. It is precisely because of this that when the Devourer commander led the first wave of Devourers to investigate, they actually attacked only a city belonging to Inovaca's side. It was just because the Devourers attacked the city with all their strength when they saw it, and other cities did not come to rescue, so the Devourer commander did not know that there were 5 other cities on this continent, which were equally powerful as the city. Because the city was located in the middle of their 3 cities, the other 2 cities on Inovaca's side should have sent troops to rescue. However, due to the previous fierce competition, the managers of the other 2 cities at that time were competitors of the manager of the attacked city. Therefore, the other 2 cities deliberately delayed until the Devourers withdrew their troops and did not send troops to rescue. This incident not only made Inovac very angry, but also made Augustine's side feel the crisis. Because they did not send troops to rescue this time, what about other cities next time? Although the city was not finally taken down this time, it suffered heavy losses. And most importantly, their actions made the 6 cities that could have helped each other lose their greatest role. If that was the case, why did they occupy 6 cities? Wouldn't it be better to just take one? So, under the unanimous attack of the attacked city, Augustine's 3 cities, and Inovac and his supporters, the 2 city leaders who had refused to send troops were executed together with their staff, and the matter was resolved. Although the 2 men refused to admit their crimes before, they used the gimmick that they did not send troops to protect the people in the 2 cities to incite the people in the 2 cities to support themselves. And the people in the 2 cities were indeed instigated by them at first, and they stood firmly on their side and refused to hand over the leaders of their cities and their staff. However, Augustine and Inovac jointly issued a statement later, claiming that if this matter is not resolved satisfactorily, Augustine, Inovac and his supporters, including the people in the city that was attacked before, will withdraw from the offensive and defensive agreement signed before the North Continent. These people will collectively move to the city farthest from their 2 cities, concentrate their forces to defend that city, and let them manage the 2 cities. Of course, if any of their cities is attacked, they will not get any rescue, and even if their cities are breached, the survivors in the city will never be accepted by them. Aren't you supporting those 2 guys and the people around him? Okay. You continue, we won't play anymore, you have fun by yourself. At this time, the survivors in the 2 cities panicked, because in this way, they are 2 isolated cities, and the number of people is much less, because there are still many supporters of Inovac in the city, and people who have a good impression of Wang Feng. If the statements made by Inovac and Augustine were true, these people would certainly not stay here. So after a fierce debate, the leaders of the 2 cities and their staff were unable to convince the survivors who were already panicked and in danger of disaster, and they were all sent to the guillotine. After this incident, Inovac regained his command and redistributed the managers of the 3 cities. This time, even the manager of the city that was attacked before could not keep his position. However, after experiencing the siege, this guy finally understood that before defeating the Devourer, no matter how much he fought, it would be useless. Once the city was broken and people died, there would be nothing left except a bird facing the sky. No, if you die in the hands of the Devourer, not even a bird will be left. After this redistribution, they reached a new agreement. If a neighboring city is attacked again and no rescue is provided, no matter which city it is, the top leaders will be executed, and all the survivors in that city will be abandoned. With this agreement, and the fate of the 2 managers and their staff who had just been beheaded, it is estimated that they will not appear again in the future. Even if someone dares to propose it without fear of death, no one will respond. Therefore, When the Mother Nest Guards came to the North Continent again and launched an attack here, they suddenly found that this continent, which seemed to have no advantages except advanced weapons and sufficient ammunition, had become a very difficult bone to chew. However, on the third day after the Devourer landed, when the war situation was in a stalemate, a turning point in favor of the Devourer appeared. Just when the Devourers were fighting with the fighting nations of the North Continent, and the three Mother Nest Guards were worried about how to deal with the 6 cities, several humans suddenly appeared in front of them. There were 10 of them in total, and they were brought to the front of the 3 Mother Nest Guards by several Devourer elites, because these 10 people took the initiative to come to the door and said they would provide them with help. They directly found the patrolling Devourers and said they wanted to see their leaders to discuss important matters and help them break into the city they were attacking. Of course, the Devourer didn't dare to treat such humans as food anymore, so it brought them to the Mother Nest Guards. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 658. These people are the people of the Tianzhou and Zhuhan tribes who were driven away by Wang Feng and his men. After they were driven away, they simply hid because they were afraid of being retaliated. These two nations actually have the ambition to dominate the world, and they have already started to lay out their plans many years ago. Although the people of these two nations are somewhat arrogant, they are sometimes quite tolerant, which can be said to be a very contradictory combination. They can immediately be servile and flattering to another nation that they may have despised, just because this nation may bring them benefits. Even if this nation will act recklessly in their country and oppress their people, they will explain this as a manifestation of friendship between the two countries. But no matter what, the people of these two nations are indeed very pragmatic, and they are barely united internally. And they have another advantage, that is, in order to achieve their goals, they can do whatever it takes and reverse right and wrong. They can deny everything they have done, no matter how conclusive the evidence is, as long as it is something that will discredit their own nation, they will never admit that they have done it. They will even teach their children that these are really not done by our ancestors, but others think we are too good and are throwing dirty water on us. There is a saying that if you want a lie to be true, you have to deceive yourself. Although they can't deceive themselves, they can deceive their descendants, which is half the success, right? They are also good at flattering themselves. As long as it can make their race show up, no matter what invention, technology, or work, or even some traditional festivals, as long as the race and skin color of the inventors are not too different from theirs, they will also say that they are their people. Because only in this way can it be shown that their racial bloodline is indeed excellent enough, and even the gods they believe in have 8 heads. The gods of your other races have only 1 head, so this time they can always suppress you, right? Yours will die if you are beheaded once, but our gods have 8 heads. Later, they found out that cats have 9 lives, and their god seemed to be a little worse than this animal, so they invented another god with 9 tails. Although it was a bit troublesome to make up the bloodline of this god, at least their imagination was rich enough to finally give the god they made up a proper identity. Later, they seemed to understand what mating meant, so another industry flourished in their country. Of course, these were not their main purpose of looking for the devourer, because whether it was 8 heads or 9 tails, it should not be attractive to the devourer. After all, they also knew that the devourer was about to treat people as food, and for food, whether it was beautiful or ugly did not seem to be the key to whether it was delicious or not. Otherwise, why would crabs be more expensive than chickens? I mean the kind of chicken that can be eaten and cooked in a normal way. After all, 2 legs are always easier to accept than 8 legs, right? The reason why the 2 tribes came here this time was that their ancestors had made arrangements for their race to dominate the world many generations ago. Only a few people in their 2 tribes knew about this matter, but when they were driven out, they had to expose the biggest secret of their 2 tribes in order to avoid others. Because their dream is to dominate the world, that is, the planet they are on, not just the North Continent. But if you want to dominate the world, you must first conquer the North Continent where they are. Unfortunately, there are very few people in their two tribes, so a frontal attack may be a bit reluctant, especially when the ancestors of their two tribes just started to lay out this plan. This planet was still in the era of cold weapons. In that era, the number of people was the key to determining the outcome of the war. Although there were many examples of defeating the majority with the minority, it required the use of strategies. Therefore, their ancestors asked around for useful strategies, and finally heard back a sentence: repairing the plank road in the open and crossing Chenkang in secret. They only studied the phrase openly repair the plank road for 5 or 6 years before they figured it out. That meant they had to build a plank road tomorrow, but they still couldn't figure out what a plank road was, so they simply replaced it with a tunnel. As for the phrase secretly crossing Chenkang, they would never understand it. If it was replaced with something ambiguous, they would be quite good at it, especially since they couldn't find the person named Chenkang, so they just gave up. Anyway, since it was a strategy, and they had found out with great difficulty, it must be a very powerful and peerless strategy. So even if they only understood half of it, it should be enough for them to occupy this small North Continent, right? So from that era on, the people of the two tribes began to dig tunnels secretly, and they all started digging in their own borders, in a deserted mountain. After so many years, they never gave up this project, even if dynasties changed and things changed, but this tunnel was dug until the end of the world. Of course, they were also disguising themselves while digging, because with the development of the times, various surveying instruments have become quite advanced. So their excavation progress has long been stopped, and the main work in modern times has long become disguising this tunnel. The most puzzling thing is that when they first excavated this tunnel, the idea was to let their army enter the enemy's city in the middle of the night like a Trojan horse attack, and then occupy it from the inside. However, due to the huge project, the first generation of people who participated in this project at that time all died within a few years after the tunnel construction started. Because of the importance of the matter, they did not tell their descendants why they had to dig this tunnel, but only told them the direction of the excavation and that this project was the key to whether their race could dominate the world, so they had to continue at any time. So, until now, no one knows how this tunnel helped them dominate the world. Apart from anything else, if you dig a tunnel to someone else's capital now, you might as well just get a visa and fly there. The members of the two tribes now only remember that the rule passed down by their ancestors is that this project cannot be stopped no matter what, so they used means such as water diversion and irrigation to make those countries mistakenly think that this tunnel was groundwater when they surveyed it, and did not find that it was artificially dug. It was not until some time ago that they were driven out and had nowhere to go that they remembered the previous tunnel, and finally understood why their ancestors said that this tunnel was related to whether their race could dominate the world. Obviously, without this tunnel, they would be found and killed. If they died, they would certainly not be able to dominate the world, so their ancestors were quite far-sighted. Since they brought some food when they left, and there was groundwater flowing in those tunnels, it would definitely not be a problem for them to hide in it for a short time. But it would definitely not work if it lasted for a long time. That's why they chose to join Augustine and his group, and would rather be insulted than think of this tunnel, because they would starve to death because they had no food, and crops could not be grown underground. So, during this period of time, they have been hiding underground. That's why the survivors of the North Continent did not find them when they were looking for zombies and mutants all over the continent to exchange potions with Wang Feng. However, they discovered this situation through the monitoring hole of the tunnel. They were so scared at the time that they thought these people were looking for them, and of course they dared not show their heads. However, now that such a long time has passed, their food has been exhausted. In order not to starve to death, they sneaked out and wanted to try their luck. They thought that if it didn't work, they could send a few tall people, pretending to be people from Wang Feng's country, to ask Augustine and his group for some food. because except for their short stature, they look quite similar to the race of Wang Feng and his group. However, when they went to find Augustine and the others, they unexpectedly found that they were fighting with the Devourer. In this situation, they naturally did not dare to move forward, so they quickly retreated to the tunnel and called the top leaders to discuss. Their discussion did not last long. In the past, they would discuss such a big thing for at least a week to a month. But now they have been hungry for a few days. If they do that again, they may all starve to death before they can come up with a result. So this time their efficiency reached the fastest speed in history. It only took half an hour. It took only half an hour for them to decide to surrender to the Devourer, because they did not know that the Devourer was here to destroy their planet this time, and they thought they just wanted to occupy this place and then raise people as a pasture. The result of their discussion was that if they surrendered to these Devourers, and their number was not large, they might not be regarded as food, but as managers of this pasture. After all, a place that can produce food continuously should also be useful to the Devourer, just like people raising cattle and sheep. Their bargaining chip, of course, is the tunnel they are in now. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 659. Their tunnels, though only one for each race, lead to several important cities underground. 3 of the 6 cities occupied by Augustine and Inovic have exits from their tunnels. But fortunately, one of the exits is within the scope of the underground fortress, so they can no longer use this passage. Because although it is disguised as an underground water source, the first high standard for building an underground fortress is safety. When the city that built the fortress saw this underground river, the first thing it did was to immediately track down the source of the underground river. Fortunately, the 2 races had been monitoring the situation in the tunnel, so they immediately sealed their tunnels and artificially created an earthquake, making them think that this earthquake destroyed the underground water source. So they just filled up the underground river that was already facing depletion, and in order to prevent accidents, they left many oscillators, and they would know if only one of them was triggered. Although it has been nearly 100 years since that incident, no one can be sure whether the oscillators left behind are still working, so this tunnel must be useless. But they still have 2 tunnels that can directly enter 2 of the cities, and they happen to be the 2 cities closest to the landing site of the Devourer. Because the countries of the 2 tribes were originally close to the sea, the landing site of the Devourer is also the territory of their 2 countries. Of course, their tunnels lead to the 2 nearest cities. In fact, only 2 cities have the tunnels they dug, which is very lucky, because the tunnels of the 2 tribes now directly connect more than a dozen cities in the North Continent. It's just that Wang Feng chose very well at the time, so now there are only 2 cities that may be directly broken by the Devourer. And Augustine and Inovic, no one knows the existence of this tunnel, which is the most fatal to them. Because even if they rely on the tunnel, the Devourer can only break through 2 cities, but don't forget that these 6 cities are connected end to end. The pattern formed by these 6 cities is like a hexagram. Not to mention being directly attacked by 2 cities, even if one city is attacked, it will pose a threat to all their other cities. Because that at least means that when their most marginal city is attacked, they can only have one city to support. In this way, not only the attacked city will be unsure, but the city going to rescue will also be terrified. In this way, with the morale plummeting, it is conceivable how much combat power they can exert. For these human races who took the initiative to surrender, the Mother Nest Guards did not immediately use them to vent their anger. After all, when their men reported before, they said that these humans had a way for them to quickly break through the city in front of them. Although they don't know whether it will work, there is no harm in listening first. However, in their hearts, they naturally have a very skeptical attitude towards this matter. After all, when they were on other planets before, there had never been a planet where the local natives surrendered directly to help them fight their own people. What the Devourer didn't know was that there were no such shameless people on other planets, and the most important thing was that the creatures on other planets had advanced technology, just like the Kali tribe. When they invaded the Kali tribe had the ability to navigate the universe before, so they knew more or less some rumors about them. Although they killed all the creatures on the planets they invaded every time, the rumors about them were still spread to other high-tech planets. This was mainly because there were some teams exploring the universe on the planets they invaded. Although they were too late to rescue them, at least they could get the information from their home planet. Although they were unable to fight back and avenge their home planet and their people, they could at least spread the news of the destruction of their home planet, as well as the image and killing methods of the invaders. In particular, they were unable to return home and could only go to other planets with advanced civilizations. While seeking shelter, they would of course desperately spread the news of the Devourer. The word spread quickly, and the notoriety of the Devourer soon spread throughout the universe. As a result, as long as the Devourer invaded, the intelligent creatures on that planet would immediately understand what kind of enemy they were attacked by. Since everyone knew that the Devourer was here to destroy their planet, and on the planets that the Devourer had swept through, it had never been heard that they would let go of any creature that had originally stayed on that planet. So, of course, no intelligent creature on that planet would suddenly go crazy and help the Devourers to conquer their own planet. But the planet where Wang Feng and his friends were located had lost its most important ability, so they had never come into contact with any creatures from other planets, and of course they didn't know about the rumors about the Devourer. Although Wang Feng has passed the information of the Devourer to everyone he can reach. However, it is obvious that the people of the two tribes, the Giant Cold Clan and the Sky Cover Clan, do not really believe in this guy who has a little strength and becomes arrogant and even denies his bloodline and ancestors. Although if Wang Feng appears in front of them now and admits that he is a member of the Giant Cold Clan and is willing to lead them to regain the glory they deserve, they will reconsider whether to accept Wang Feng or continue to help the Devourer. But at present, the possibility of this hope is infinitely close to zero, so the Giant Cold Clan and the Sky Cover Clan naturally have only one choice left, to join these Devourers. They don't know that the Devourer is to destroy their planet and help them. Maybe in the end, their two tribes will still be exterminated, even if the Devourer spares their lives because of their merits. But they will still perish together in the destruction of the planet in the end. This is not because they are stupid, but because there have been too many wars on their planet, and these wars are nothing more than for resources and land. To put it bluntly, even if it is for the sake of interests, war is inherently unjust, because justice relies on truth, while war is only about killing. Tell me, what benefits can you bring to us? Looking at the 10 humans in front of him, a nest guard asked coldly. Because the attack was frustrated, the nest guard who felt that he had lost face would certainly not look at them well. Although he didn't care much about the loss of the Devourer army, but not to mention the progress being behind, it seemed that it was still uncertain whether he could complete the task. If he failed, he could even imagine how the 3 nest guards would be laughed at by their own kind. Respected Devourers. Hello. We are here to help you. We are also a noble race like you. I am the current foreign minister of the Juhan tribe, and this is. A Juhan tribe member bowed and introduced himself to the 3 nest guards. Then, when he was about to introduce the foreign minister of the Tianzhou tribe next to him, he was interrupted by an impatient nest guard. The way this nest guard interrupted him was very simple. He took a step forward, slapped him on the head, and then slowly sucked all the vitality and life energy in his body. Watching this human slowly dying in front of him, the mother nest guard showed a cruel smile on his face, and then turned to look at the other 9 humans. This person is too troublesome to talk, I don't like it, and when I'm unhappy, I will feel hungry and want to eat, so, you'd better be faster next time. Also, I'm not interested in your names and identities. You'd better tell us directly, in addition to filling our stomachs, what other functions you have, otherwise, I'm afraid that you are not enough for us to share. We are here to tell you that we have a way to let you break through the city you are attacking now, but in exchange, you need to ensure the safety of us and our people. After the Mother Nest Guard finished speaking, the diplomat of the Tianzhou tribe who was not introduced directly stood up and said to the Mother Nest Guard. However, he originally wanted to say what race these people came from, but fortunately, the mummy in the hands of the Mother Nest Guard, which he didn't look very familiar with now, reminded him, so he quickly changed his words and directly talked about their requirements. This is our only condition. Of course, we can also ensure that the methods we provide are absolutely effective. At least, we can let you break through 2 of the cities. You should be able to feel that although these cities have blocked your steps, it is only because the locations of the 6 cities are quite good. As long as you can break through 1 or 2 of them, the rest will become simple, right? Because he was afraid of being killed inexplicably, especially in such a terrifying way, the diplomat of the Tianzhou tribe said a lot in one breath, and then looked at the 3 Mother Nest Guards in front of him eagerly. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 660. It was probably because the foreign minister of the Tianzhou tribe spoke for a long time, but there was no nonsense. At least, his previous self-introduction was temporarily changed to explaining his purpose. Therefore, his words were not interrupted by the 3 Mother Nest Guards. However, after he finished speaking, when he looked at the 3 Mother Nest Guards eagerly, one of the Mother Nest Guards moved. When the palm of the Mother Nest Guard was placed on the shoulder of the foreign minister of the Tianzhou tribe, a shrill scream sounded again. Although the foreign minister of the Tianzhou tribe screamed and begged his companions with his eyes while his vitality was being absorbed, hoping that they would help him, but none of the other 8 people dared to stop him, but just trembled on the side. Obviously, they didn't know why this foreign minister would have the same fate as the previous person, and, as far as it seems, he has obviously experienced a little longer. In other words, the pain he endured was even greater than that of the foreign minister of the Zhuhan tribe before. After 5 minutes of indescribable torture, the foreign minister of the Tianzhou tribe finally stopped screaming and went to see their Tianzhou god. He actually dared to negotiate with us, which I don't like. After casually throwing away the mummy in his hand, the Mother Nest Guard looked at the remaining 8 humans and said lightly. Now what you are talking about, the only thing I am interested in is the method they just mentioned that can allow us to break the city, so the next person to speak should only talk about this, otherwise, the last guy among us who has not eaten meal may be very happy. The 8 survivors of the 2 tribes looked at each other, and they didn't expect that these devourers were so cruel and difficult to talk to. But it was impossible for them to directly tell the devourers about the existence of the tunnel between their 2 tribes. All their tribesmen are now in the tunnel. If they don't get that promise, their end must be very miserable. Come out. Being caught by the devourer and used as food, like the 2 people before, died miserably. Not coming out? Staying in the tunnel and starving to death, it seems that these 2 ways are not very pleasant, and the degree of pain should be comparable. So, after thinking about it, these devourers in front of them have become the only way out for their 2 tribes. Only by getting their promise, even if they let them eat most of their people, as long as the inheritance of their 2 tribes can be kept from extinction and continue, it may be enough. Although what they wanted before was that the devourer would not harm their people, it seems unlikely to be possible now. Even the guy who made the request was eaten directly, so they didn't expect all their people to survive. 3 adults, no matter what, we won't tell that method unless we get the promise we want, even if you eat all of us here. A survivor of the Sky-Cover tribe stood up and said to the last nest guard who hadn't eaten yet. Although his body was shivering uncontrollably, and even his pants were wet, waves of foul smell had already come out. However, there was a firm look in his eyes. He should have known that he would live or die, but he still stood up. No matter how despicable the race is, there are warriors, and no matter how powerful the country is, there are cowards. Moreover, these 10 people were originally 10 people carefully selected from the 2 tribes. Because before sending people out, they had already considered the situation, and naturally they would choose people they thought they were more certain of, and would not hand over their chips without achieving their goals because of the threat of the devourer. These 10 people were not afraid of death. Before they came out, they had already regarded themselves as all dead, so now although they felt fear, none of them would tell the tunnel before getting the promise they wanted. When they came out, they already knew the bottom line of their 2 tribes, that is, their 2 tribes could not be exterminated, and they must leave enough tribesmen to pass on their race. Our previous conditions don't count, but you must guarantee that a certain number of our people can survive, at least not less than 200,000. If you don't agree to this, you can kill us all now and continue to attack your city. The guy who stood up was afraid that he would be eaten by the mother nest guard before he finished speaking, so he said a lot in one breath. However, to his surprise, this time, the remaining mother nest guard who had not eaten yet did not kill him, but looked at the other 7 people. The other 7 people, although they guessed that the mother nest guard might want to change someone to his taste to eat, did not dodge. Because they had a premonition that all of them seemed to die here. Since they would die sooner or later, it would be better to die earlier. Watching their people quickly grow old and die in front of them, for the living, it would only increase the fear in their hearts. Seeing the expressions of these people, the nest guard frowned. He could see fear in their eyes, but he also saw the decision in their hearts. He knew that if he did not agree to their promise, it would be like what they said before, even if he killed them all, he would not get the secret in their hearts. This nest guard was number 12 among number 12, 13, and 14 who came this time. He looked at the other 2 nest guards, communicated with them with his consciousness for a while, and then came straight to those people, looked at them and said, "Okay. I agree to your request and leave you at least 200,000 people to continue your race. However, this requires that the method you provide is indeed effective. Before that, all your people must be under our surveillance. After we verify that the method you provide is indeed effective, we will release 200,000 of your people and allocate a city for them to live in. While we are still on this continent, they cannot leave that city, but after we leave, they can be free. Not only this continent, but even this planet will belong to you completely. However, there is one thing I need to remind you of. The promise we made is limited to the devourers of our level. In other words, all the devourers who have landed on this planet at present, all the devourers will abide by our promise. But among our devourers, there is a most powerful creature. We cannot decide his will. He will arrive here in about half a year. If at that time, he feels that the remaining 200,000 of your people do not need to survive, then we will still exterminate them. This is the promise we can make. If you accept it, you will go back immediately and bring your people here to complete our agreement. If not, then forget it. After killing you, we will still use our methods to attack the 6 cities, and we will also find your people, and after finding them, we will exterminate them all. Okay. Now I give you 5 minutes to discuss it yourself and then give us an answer. After the discussion, the 3 nest guards finally chose to compromise. At present, their most important task is to occupy the 6 cities. Recently, they have explored the northern continent in full and confirmed that all the creatures on this continent have been concentrated in the 6 cities. In this case, there are still survivors who have not been discovered by them. This shows that the place where these survivors are hiding is very secret, and they must be underground. And their hiding place underground must be very deep from the ground, so that they can't feel the energy fluctuations of these humans. In this case, it is better to agree to them and let them show up on their own initiative. After all, there are millions of humans. Although they have to leave them with 200,000 in the end, it is not too much. What's more, they all know the fate of this planet. It will eventually be destroyed, so these 200,000 people will eventually perish with the destruction of this planet. However, because they don't know the mother nest's thoughts, there will be the following paragraph, because the devourers have never reached any agreement with the creatures on the planet they attacked. This is the first time for them, so they naturally don't understand. In fact, for humans, this kind of agreement can be violated at any time, and it is not necessary to abide by it. So these people of the Zhuhan clan and the Tianzhou clan are really lucky to have met a race that keeps its promises. The 8 survivors of the 2 tribes who thought they were doomed were about to go see their great god when they heard the words of the 12th nest guard. They were overjoyed and gathered together to discuss. After discussing for a full 5 minutes, using up all the time given to them by the nest guards, they finally came to a conclusion. After making a decision, a survivor of the Sky-Cover tribe came to the 3 already impatient nest guards, took a deep breath, and asked them a question.